So recently, over the course of last year, I've been getting a lot into visual novels. This is probably what I consider to be the biggest niche in Japanese media, or at least one of the biggest ones. We've all watched anime, we've all read manga, and we've all listened to anime openings on Spotify while in private session in fear of being made fun of by our friends. But I find visual novels to be completely overlooked a lot of the time. It surprises me how much people just don't even know about them. Now, I was talking to a friend about visual novel adaptations, and if you're watching this, you know who you are. But I was kinda taken aback when he didn't even know shows like Clannad, Steins Gate, and Higurashi were adapted from VNs. Even when I watched these shows way back when, I thought the source material would have been common knowledge. But anyway, let's get back on topic here. I've played through a handful of visual novels recently, but there's been one that stuck out to me the most. It doesn't necessarily stand out because it's my favorite one, rather it stands out due to the pure, raw, unpleasant emotions it drew out from within me. The House in Fata, Morgana. Now, let me just get one thing out of the way. The title is clickbait. Well, kinda. You see, I don't hate the game. In fact, I think it's a really damn good read. So before you dislike the video and rush to the comments and call me stupid and shallow, let me just say I don't think it's awful in the sense you think it is. I don't think the game is awful quality-wise, rather I think it's the plot that's awful. Well, in a good way. Let me elaborate. The game is meant to be gut-wrenching. It is meant to bring you nothing but disgust. This game has probably been the hardest game or any piece of media to get through for me. There are a multitude of times where I almost dropped it entirely. At first it was for petty reasons like the art style not having the typical anime aesthetic present in most visual novels. The OST was also something I had to get used to, as I found the vocals to actually be pretty grating at first, which I apologize for in advance if you think the same way, since I've probably been blasting it in the background this entire time. But the more I went through it, the reasoning for me almost letting go of the game became much more reasonable. It was just plain hard to read. I really don't want to say much as I want to avoid spoiling this as much as possible, and I'll get to a plot overview later in the video, so I apologize if it sounds like I'm repeating myself here, but this is probably the first visual novel I've played to make me physically jump out of my seat in a fit of anger, rage, and disgust. There are a lot of really dark themes in this, and if the art style wasn't a dead giveaway, this is not some happy-go-lucky game. It deals with a lot of very serious real-world problems, ranging from domestic abuse, racism, transphobia, and more that I can't say without running the risk of being demonetized. In short, this game is really not for the faint of heart, and if you're someone who's sensitive to these themes or gets a little too emotional watching fictional characters, then I actually highly advise you to stay away from this game, or at least just settle on watching a playthrough on it. As someone whose favorite genre of media is psychological mystery and thriller, I'm more than accustomed to seeing characters go through hell and back. But good lord, this game had me on my knees for most of its duration. But now let's say you do want to pick up the game. What should you look out for? I mentioned earlier there are multiple reasons as to why I almost dropped this game, but I did skip over another big reason. The start was painfully slow. Be warned now, in this section I will be discussing the way the game is structured and the overall plot of the game. There will really only be minor spoilers, and I'll do my best not to spoil anything too important. But if you want to go into the game completely blind, then I highly advise you to skip over to the next section of the video. There should be a timestamp in the description, or the video chapter should be visible. Anyway, as I was saying, the start was painfully slow, and that's part of how the game is structured. The plot centers around you, an amnesiac main character who finds himself in a supposedly cursed mansion. There are absolutely no signs of life in the building, apart from a singular maid whose goal is to refresh your memories. To do this, she takes you on a journey through time, giving you glimpses of the mansion's past inhabitants, which hopefully will cause a memory to reignite within you, giving your sense of self back. You get to experience these inhabitants' lives as a quiet observer, watching their daily lives up until you find out the reason they stopped living in the mansion. Now, these stories are not at all bad. In fact, I quite enjoyed reading through them once I got into the game more. However, the problem lies in the fact that they don't at all seem connected at the start, and you're just kinda left scratching your head reading through them. I'm not gonna beat around the bush here, so I'm just gonna say I'm sure you already know that isn't the whole game. Obviously, it's set up for a second act where all the pieces get connected and everything makes sense. All questions are answered and everything just clicks for you. but getting there can be a bit of a pain in the ass. If you're unfamiliar with visual novels, let me just say they are long. Fata Morgana can probably be considered a medium-length VN, which probably sounds not bad, until you find out 20 hours is still on the shorter end of visual novels. This game is over 30 hours long, meaning you'll probably spend 10 to 15 hours reading through seemingly unconnected stories with no sign of a main overarching plot in sight. This obviously will be a bit of a turn off to some, and it made the game a bit harder to go through for me. Yes, the stories are good, yes, they are essential to the overall plot, but I felt as if they took a bit too long to get through. Another small gripe I have with the game is that it feels a bit padded at times. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but some sections felt like they went on for ages. And not just the first half of it. When I was reading, I thought I was for sure nearing the end. So I decided to keep on reading, only to realize the game went on for another 8 hours. So yeah, I really felt that the game needed to cut down a bit on some dialogue, and I felt that it could have done with a bit less scenes. But in all honesty, it didn't hurt my enjoyment all too much. But now, enough with the criticism. Let me talk about the game's strongest point in my opinion, the characters. This game has some of the most well-written characters I've had the pleasure to meet. They're all so intricate and nuanced, each with their own unique personality, traits, and flaws. It's incredibly easy to get attached to these characters, and the game does a really good job of making you feel all the pain they go through. Even the villains in the story are very humanized, well, for the most part, and you just can't help but feel bad even for them. All the characters are completely fleshed out. All their motives, their backstories, their circumstances, and their everything are just laid bare for you to witness. It deconstructs all its characters, and you really take a dive into their deepest, darkest secrets, often seeing them at their absolute lowest, and it can be downright gut-wrenching at times. One of the biggest criticisms I have with any form of media, especially those with a slow start like this one, is when they don't even attempt to make you care about the characters. I'm completely fine with setup. I'm fine if a story wants to take its time before it gets going, but if you don't make me care about the characters from the start, then chances are I won't care about them when it actually matters later on. In this game, it is completely absent. A lot of the time I find myself at the mercy of the writers. They play me like their puppet for goodness sake. Whatever they want me to feel, I damn well will feel. If they want me to sympathize with the former villain, then without a second thought I will. The way the characters interact, grow, and develop feels so incredibly real to me, and even though I've only spent around 30 hours with these characters, it feels like I've had a whole lifetime with them. The themes of the story are conveyed perfectly through its characters. All of the time it shows the absolute worst side of humanity, and it shows all the disgusting things humans are capable of. But in moments few and far between, it shows the beauty of a nurtured relationship and how true love and care can be born between people. The story is carried forward by nothing but its characters. All the things they go through are caused solely by them. It's a story that revolves around its characters, not the other way around. The game's ability to get you attached to characters is honestly unparalleled in my opinion. I was on the verge of tears multiple times playing through the story and seeing all the hardships these people went through. Now I would say I'm a person who can easily disconnect himself from fictional characters. But goddamn, I've probably cared a lot more about these characters than actual people I've met in real life. I know at first it might seem a bit hard to form a connection with them, but give it some time and I'm sure you too will be falling into the rabbit hole. In the end, despite all the things this game subjects you to, despite pushing you through hell and back, I genuinely think the story has a very beautiful message to tell you. I won't be telling you what it is here, but rather, I think it's something you should see for yourself. If you're willing to sit through heart-piercing scenes and dialogue that will give you the urge to vomit, then I highly entice you to play through the game in its entirety. This is a genuinely good experience that I will recommend to anyone who can handle the things it subjects you to. It's a game that, despite its fantasy setting, is very human in nature. All the characters are a deconstruction of modern humans and the problems we all face today. They're filled with imperfections, which in turn makes them ooze out realism. The story is told wonderfully through its cast and keeps you reading until the bitter end. This game is awful, no doubt about it. However, it also shows you that there can be beauty found within it. You will experience the most raw emotion you will probably feel throughout your entire life. Emotions you probably aren't even aware of. Your mind will probably be pushed to its limits, and your conscience might be broken. But in the end, if you keep reading, then I'm sure you'll reach your happy ending.
ficar.